I want to welcome you to today's program, which is going to clarify why you should ask, what's it made of? And which is going to empower you in sourcing furnishings products to reduce chemical exposure. In this hour, we're going to focus on avoidance of toxic inputs, covering the handful of harmful chemicals that are most commonly found in furnishings. We're going to look at where these things are occurring and why they are problematical. This information is brought to you by Sustainable Furnishings Council with support from an Irene Winifred Eno grant that the ASID Foundation provided us. I have all of you on mute, but we do want to hear from you. So please send in your comments and questions in the chat or question box on the right-hand side of your screen. To start, I'll introduce myself and our work. I'm Susan Ingalls. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Furnishings Council. SFC is a membership organization serving the residential furnishings industry. We help companies reduce environmental footprint, and we help consumers find the more environmentally safe furnishings and design services that they prefer. We formed in 2006 and now boast nearly 400 member companies that are all involved in residential furnishings in various ways. Suppliers, manufacturers, retailers, design firms, environmental organizations, each has made their own public and verifiable commitment to sustainability, to transparency, and to continuous improvement. We support members in realizing their own corporate commitment with guidance and education and resources, networking, and marketing support. Members use our well-respected member seal in their marketing and advertising and have a landing page on our site that provides a snapshot of their commitment. We also serve the industry beyond our membership. And to enhance that purpose, we formed Sustainable Furnishings Education Fund in 2017. We're serving the industry with a number of initiatives, including What's It Made Of and the Wood Furniture Scorecard. We're an educational organization more than anything else, and our certificate program, Green Leaders, which is 6 hours of instruction and 6 continuing education units with IDCEC and with GBCI, is popular and a useful program that I'll be happy to tell you more about. As I said, much of what we do is provide information and education. The ASID Foundation, which is concerned with empowering design and empowering the future, got interested in our What's It Made Of initiative. They provided support in 2020, and we thank them very much. We won the ASID Foundation's 2020 Irene Winifred Eno grant to study what designers do and do not know about harmful chemicals that commonly occur in furnishings, and to begin to determine how to fill the gap for them. This presentation is part of what we've been able to provide with that support. It's important because designers are in such an important position, influencing consumer decisions and also influencing manufacturers' decisions. So let's get started with a presentation that I hope will empower you. As you realize, there are many issues that fall under that wide umbrella of sustainability. Taking care to make cleaner choices is a key part of tending to the triple bottom line, reducing pollution in our homes and offices, as well as in all the ecosystems that our waste streams touch, and improving health at home immediately and in all ecosystems over the long run. This, of course, is important if we hope to sustain a healthy future. It is also important to our immediate business development priorities. In our Sustainable Furnishings Council consumer research, which we've done almost every year since 2008, we've learned that concern about the range of sustainability issues has grown dramatically, from about half of all consumers being concerned about any given issue when we started, to approximately all of them being concerned now. Drilling down a bit, we learned how very concerned consumers are about environmental toxins, such as those that might be in the air in our homes and offices. Not only are 35% of households affected, but an additional 50% of households think everyone should care, affected or not. And in all, 97% know it's an issue. If it's on the minds of your clients, you need to have some understanding and be able to respond. In recent decades, incidents of diseases linked to exposure to harmful chemicals have risen dramatically, as these increases since 1975 show. In spite of all the money we're spending on healthcare, and in spite of the wonderful medical advances that are keeping us from dying, we're sicker than we used to be. Poor indoor air quality aggravates asthmatics, and asthma is not the only childhood disease associated with harmful chemical compounds that volatilize and are polluting our indoor environments. Look at how we are seeing increases in childhood obesity, in birth defects, in autism, in childhood leukemia, and in food allergies. Although mortality is declining, leukemia, brain cancer, other childhood cancers have increased by more than 20% since 1975. As of 2008, nearly 1 in 6 children has a learning or developmental disability. Adult health is also deteriorating in our modern era, with an especially dramatic increase in chronic conditions and in cancer. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 133 million people in the U.S., almost half of all Americans, are now living with chronic diseases and conditions, which now account for 70% of deaths and 75% of U.S. healthcare costs. Scientists know, and consumers are learning the hard way, that many of these chemicals commonly found in furnishings are causing and aggravating these health problems. These chemicals are directly linked to myriad diseases, from annoying to life-threatening. And often, they're coming from our home environments with the materials and products that we choose for a lovely decor. As a matter of fact, since World War II, more than 84,000 chemicals have been introduced into American commerce. The EPA has been able to sufficiently test safety for a few, approximately 200, with regulation of only 5 as of 2015. With the 2016 Toxic Substances Control Act reform, 10 more chemicals were immediately slated to be regulated, but the enforcement process has been slow, and there's been a threat to further regulation of chemicals that are known to compromise our health. There are too many of them for the EPA to sufficiently test them all, so thinking of them in their chemical classes is useful for us. And there are 5 of them that are particularly common in furnishings products. This harmful handful of chemicals most commonly found in furnishings products are all persistent and bioaccumulative, causing harm to life on this planet, specifically to ourselves. They include VOCs like formaldehyde, flame retardants, fluorinated stain treatments, PVC or vinyl, and antimicrobials. What we want you to be able to think about as you're specifying products with these chemicals are questions like, is it necessary? Is it worth it? And is there a safer alternative? Out of concern about these 5 that we in residential furnishings can take particular responsibility for limiting, SFC and our partners are working an initiative that we call What's It Made Of? Our goals are to encourage transparency in our supply chains and to stimulate innovation that'll make possible the eventual elimination of this handful of hazardous chemicals. Further, we aim to help consumers find the clean, healthy products we know they prefer. It starts with a simple pledge to ask, what's it made of? Those who pledge, which you can do on our website, are given a pledge card to remind them to keep asking. While we freely acknowledge that you're not going to be able to find many products that are completely free of all these harmful chemicals, we know that urging transparency will nudge our suppliers to improve. Once you have signed the pledge to ask, we want to help you get a good answer to that question. To that end, we're pleased to offer a useful vendor questionnaire that you can use in conversation with your suppliers and to determine whether these particular harmful substances are present in the products that you are specifying. We think the most important thing at this stage is to start asking. The questionnaire is in SurveyMonkey, and the results come through to you and to SFC when you ask your suppliers to fill out the survey. Eventually, we expect to have enough information to put a mark by SFC member companies that have taken the pledge and used the questionnaire so we can share with consumers which companies are likely to answer their questions. It is going to be a lengthy process, we know. Now, we are going to spend some time discussing each of the hazardous handful. As I said, they're all common in furnishings products. Here we see where you might find them. VOCs like formaldehyde are found in finishes, paints, adhesives, and backings. In furnishings, of course, we are inclined to put a finish on everything. The PFAS chemicals, including a variety of highly fluorinated stain treatments, are found in performance fabrics and carpets, as well as aftermarket stain treatments. Antimicrobials are in performance fabrics too, and in mattresses. Flame retardants are in upholstery foam and fabric, as well as in drapery and other places. And PVC or vinyl is insidious. It's in faux leather, in performance fabrics, outdoor furniture, inflatable mattresses, etc. So we're going to look at these one by one. Indoor air quality, of course, is a concern to many families because of the rising incidence of asthma and chemical sensitivity that causes skin and eye irritation, nasal congestion, and other respiratory problems. The culprit is a group of toxic chemicals that are volatile, moving from a liquid state to a gas state, so-called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. They're emitted as a gas from solids or liquids. They usually have an odor. If it smells bad, it's probably not good for you. But many times, even levels undetectable to smell are harmful. These VOCs are made up of chemicals that go by names like benzene, styrene, xylene, etc., and formaldehyde, and they're harmful to the sensitive linings of your lungs. Many think of air pollution as an outdoor concern, but numerous studies have shown that these chemical gases are present indoors at levels 2 to 5 times higher than outdoors. They're released over time from things brought into our indoor spaces and sealed inside by good weatherproofing and circulated by our efficient HVAC systems. VOCs off-gas from many components that go into furniture and furnishings. First, VOCs from industrial adhesives have historically posed a problem. Glue turns planks into tabletops and panels, binds joints, attaches veneers, and holds together composite boards like plywood, which is layers of wood glued together, particle board, which is chips of wood glued together with more glue, and medium density fiberboard, or MDF, which is dust of wood glued together with lots of glue. Second, finishes like varnish, lacquer, and shellac are kept liquid in the can with high VOC thinners, typically acetone. The finish hardens as the acetone evaporates and stays in the air. Of course, other types of finishes are used to seal and back fabric. Those finishes, too, are often VOC laden. One of the most notorious VOCs is formaldehyde, the stuff used to preserve dead frogs for high school dissections because it is so effective in killing any trace of life. It also enhances stickiness, so it's very useful in formulating strong industrial glues that have been commonly used to make furniture for many years, as well as in finishes. And it doesn't take much of it to be harmful. The Safe Indoor Air Standard is 5/100ths of 1 part per million air molecules, according to the testing experts at UL Environment's Green Guard certification labs, which was the first lab to develop an indoor air quality standard. We are exposed to VOCs by breathing them in, and since they are in so many products that we bring into our homes, most of us are getting a larger daily dose than that indoor air quality standard would recommend. Formaldehyde and other VOCs are linked to a wide range of human health impacts, including respiratory illness and cancer, as well as health issues in the liver and kidney and the nervous system. There are cautionary notes on the EPA website warning of symptoms that point to these health effects, including eye, nose, and throat irritation, headaches, loss of coordination, and nausea. Government has been trying to address these issues, specifically with formaldehyde restrictions. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, is the state agency responsible for air quality issues there. They're the ones who pushed the car companies to add catalytic converters to minimize outdoor air pollution in the 1970s when smog threatened to overwhelm Los Angeles. They also led the way in cleaning up indoor air. In January of 2009, they passed a law reducing allowable formaldehyde emissions from the glue in composite boards by about half of what was common then. Manufacturers complained but complied, and the EPA adopted it as a national regulation in June of 2010. We are now in the second phase of this stepped reduction schedule, with federal regulation matching the California requirement. The most recent progress is the requirement that a third party certify actual formaldehyde emissions of the composite board product. So that's progress. And great progress has been made in finishes and paints, much of it driven by government regulation too. Recognizing the toxicity of the thinners that keep the finish liquid as it is applied to the surface, the EPA set a VOC limit for all paints at 350 grams per liter. and they set specific limits for low VOC at 200 grams per liter or less, and no VOC at 100 grams per liter or less. If you want to qualify for LEED credit, the limits are lower, 150 grams per liter for non-flat paints, 50 grams per liter for flats. Every major brand of paint and finish now offers low or no VOC options at various levels below the limits. You'll find that the finishes are either specially formulated to have completed off-gassing quicker, so ideally long before they reach a home, and they carry a certification to prove it, or they are water-based and inherently less VOC laden. Some of the old-fashioned options, of course, continue to be the best. Pure natural linseed oil and lime paint and milk paint are inherently cleaner and healthier too. These certifications indicate compliance with government mandates and voluntary standards for reduced formaldehyde. GreenGuard is the original standard for indoor air quality. The certification was created by a nonprofit founded in 2001 to establish acceptable standards for over 10,000 chemicals, and years later it was acquired by UL Environmental. Other important certifiers of indoor air quality include SCS Indoor Advantage certification, which was developed by SCS Global Services and certifies compliance with rigorous indoor air quality requirements that are more rigorous than some levels of GreenGuard certification. It's designed for interior building materials and furnishings and finish systems. You can also look for compliance with these governmental requirements like the CARB requirement for composite board. Now I'm going to answer questions at the end, but I want to invite you to send in your questions by the chat box or the question box. Okay? Flame retardants have been a news topic since the 2012 expose articles in the Chicago Herald Tribune and the New York Times, and the airing in 2013 of Toxic Hot Seat, all of which raised awareness that has led to some positive changes. California has led the way on the presence as well as the growing absence of flame retardant chemicals in our furniture. They began to mandate flame retardant chemicals in flexible foam, which, since it is a petroleum product, is highly flammable, with their Technical Bulletin 117, adopted in 1978. Even at the outset, though, scientists knew that the mandated flame retardant chemicals were highly toxic. Oops. If flame retardants were found to increase fire safety, then we would have to do a serious analysis of the benefits of fire safety compared to the toxic exposure. But there is no evidence that flame retardants increase fire safety, and there are thousands of studies that show widespread environmental contamination and public health exposure from these chemicals. Even the government studies that have been done show that flame retardants in furniture foam do not prevent fires from occurring or decrease the severity of the fire. And many studies show that these toxic chemicals are making their way into our bodies, mostly as we ingest them in form of dust that comes directly off upholstered products as that foam slowly breaks down. But remember, the chemicals are persistent, so they do eventually get into our ecosystems and arrive to us in other ways. There are a range of health problems associated with exposure to flame retardant chemicals. They're suffered especially by firemen and by children, those most exposed. Some flame retardants have been found to be linked to neurodevelopmental problems. Concerning effects in children include decreased memory and learning, lower birth weight, hyperactivity, reduced IQ. A particularly concerning study by the Columbia Mailman School of Public Health found that children born to mothers with high levels of a certain flame retardant had reduced IQ levels similar to the negative effects on IQ found from exposure to lead. These chemicals can mimic estrogen and can particularly affect the thyroid hormone, which is so important for brain development. Several flame retardants have been found to reduce fertility for both men and women, and this includes some of the old legacy flame retardants as well as the newer flame retardant chemicals. 3 flame retardant chemicals have already been listed on California's Prop 65 list of human carcinogens. California, having figured out that these chemicals they mandated were doing more harm than good, revised their technical bulletin 117, which had been requiring flame retardant chemicals in flexible foam since 1978, in 2013. Now, under California Technical Bulletin 117-2013, it's possible, but not required, that furniture be made safe without the addition of flame retardant chemicals. And when flame retardant chemicals are used now, the product label must show it. The test for fire safety changed with this law, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission specified that test nationally to further encourage elimination of these chemicals in foam. It became law late in 2020, along with the labeling requirement that has been in place in California since 2015. There's several ways to pass the fire safe test without the addition of chemicals. Upholstery material composition can make the difference. The chemicals in fabrics and barriers under the cover fabric are also options that are in use. We did a life cycle assessment with a class at the Stanford University Graduate School of Engineering to compare Firol, the commonly touted safer flame retardant chemical, which is an alternative to PBDE and to tris, with a wool barrier. Though a wool barrier passes the fire test perfectly well, it is only 25% as harmful to the environment as Firol. Firol is less expensive than a wool barrier, but the really good news is that the cover, the upholstery material, can keep the furniture fire safe just with the intrinsic characteristics of the weave and the fiber composition. So send in questions about flame retardants. Now on to fluorinated stain treatments, common in upholstered furniture and in carpeting, that are made with polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. This is our next group of hazardous handful chemicals. Manufacturers have developed a host of chemicals in this PFAS family to repel oil and water from clothing, carpeting, furniture, food packaging, like pizza boxes and fast food containers. Firefighting foams have used them, as have cleaners, paints, roof treatments, hardwood floor protectants, and personal care products. We love our performance fabrics. They work well for that intended purpose of stain resistance and water repellency, but that is not all they do. These chemicals migrate out of products, and we are exposed via ingestion of contaminated materials and foods that we might eat from those grease-resistant packages. There are a number of specific chemicals in this category. PFOS was used until 2002 in the manufacture of 3M Scotchgard treatment, which is used on carpet and furniture and clothing. PFOA is used to make DuPont's Teflon product, famous for its use in nonstick cookware. This class of chemicals, as I said, occur in other products as well, and the entire class of highly fluorinated chemicals goes by a variety of names that are all problematical, including, you're seeing here C8 technology that is largely phased out, but the C6 and the C4 are also problematical. The problem is that they persist. They are long chain molecules that do not exist in nature, but are man-made and do not fit into any of our ecosystems, so they remain a pollutant. They're found in the bodies of 98% of Americans. Since they travel through water, that's not particularly surprising. PFAS also leaches out of products. They've been released in large quantities from manufacturing facilities for decades, and thus contaminate our water and some of our food supplies when the water goes from the groundwater table to the food, to where the food is growing. You might have read, for instance, about severe pollution in the Neuse River here in North Carolina. The PFOS and PFOA are breakdowns from a number of PFCs. Though some of these chemicals have been voluntarily phased out, the chemistry persists. So we're all still exposed, and of course, mostly through our water. We're concerned because of that persistence and also because of the serious human health concerns, including increased risk of cancer. PFOA is a likely human carcinogen. It causes liver, pancreatic, testicular, and mammary gland tumors in laboratory animals. PFOS causes liver and thyroid cancer in rats. PFCs cause a range of other problems in laboratory animals, including liver and kidney damage, as well as reproductive problems. Exposure to these before birth has been linked with lower birth weight in both animal and human studies. That's incentive to stay away from them. And the good news is that we can. But there are often other costs in some of these choices. There are naturally stain and water resistant materials like wool, but it does often cost more. There's synthetics like polypropylene, which is a byproduct of refining petroleum. For many years, it was simply discarded or burned off, as it often is now. But the Nobel Prize for Chemistry was won by the scientists who discovered the textile use of this unique polymer, and they gave it the brand name olefin. There are other, also perhaps problematical, chemical solutions like nanotechnology and solution dyed acrylics. It's important to note, however, that each of these solutions performs differently. They don't all have the same stain resistance, and they don't all have the same hand and feel. Our most recent LCA with the class at Stanford compared the potential environmental impacts of shorter chain C6 PFAS used in furniture fabric finishing with a polypropylene fabric without any type of perfluorinated carbon coating. As you can see in the chart here, polypropylene came out less polluting all around, but it is associated with a certain hand or feel, whereas a C6 treatment can be put on any fabric to make it stain resistant. So both, of course, get a lot of use. These certifications, cradle to cradle certification and the Declare label, are both ways ones you can look for to be assured that there is no highly fluorinated chemistry in the product. So I recommend looking for fabrics that are using those. The next chemical of concern in furnishings is polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, sometimes simply known as vinyl. In furnishings, it's used in rigid as well as in pliable form. Most people are familiar with PVC as the plastic used to make plumbing and electrical pipes, but it is our most common plastic, so used in many household objects as well as industrially. In furnishings, the rigid form has many applications in construction, especially outdoor furniture. The more pliable form is used in upholstery fabrics, imitation leather, fake rattan, inflatable products such as stowaway mattresses, wallpaper, flooring, and other household products. It's also found in finishes. So it might be on your floors, in your wall covering, paint, casework ceilings. And of course, vinyl is also common in window coverings, not only vinyl blinds, but also other shades and drapes. In window treatments, vinyl can be particularly problematical because the warmth of the sun can accelerate volatilization. It is insidious in home environments and often hidden. PVC is problematic throughout its life cycle, manufacture, use, and end of life. Dioxin, one of the most potent carcinogens we know, is used in making it and is released as it degrades. The more pliable form is created with the addition of phthalates, also a famous problem. Since vinyl is highly flammable, sometimes these products are also sometimes these products also include added flame retardants, which also migrate out of the product. We're exposed by breathing in the volatile organic compounds as they volatilize, and by dust as the product breaks down slowly and we breathe in the dust. It makes its way throughout our ecosystem, so does come back to us in various ways. And it causes us a range of serious health problems. Dioxin emitted in the production and combustion of PVC is a potent carcinogen and also linked to impairment of the immune system, the developing nervous system, the endocrine system, and reproductive functions. When phthalates are added, each of these dangers are increased. But there are natural materials as well as synthetics that can work for you if you're working to avoid PVC. Fake leather is a very common instance of vinyl in furnishings, but there are other fake leathers that are deemed less dangerous plastics, including polyurethane and polyethylene, for instance. Recycled polyester can be a good option instead of vinyl too. Sometimes the polyester is made from recycled plastic film that is an industrial waste from the same company. This is the case of Toray's Ultra Suede. Not all plastics are created equal, and though PVC is the most common, it is the most problematical. There is, of course, great excitement in the field of growing fake leather, and other grown materials like cork can also work instead of a vinyl cover. Or you could actually use real leather and real wood with a natural finish. These certifications are ones that you can look for to assure you of the absence of PVC. Cradle certification is not given to any product with PVC, and the Declare label would have it showing up as well. So with that, I invite you to send in questions about PVC, polyvinyl chloride. And we will turn next to antimicrobials. Note that the term can be used to describe a range of substances that do anything from retarding the growth of microbes to killing all germs, bacterial and fungal, on contact. Often they do not necessarily kill viruses. These chemicals, such as triclosan and triclocarban, which have been banned recently from soaps and rubs, can be absorbed through the skin and are detected in most Americans. Antimicrobials, especially antibiotics, have a number of uses, of course, in conventional agriculture and animal husbandry. As many studies have shown, there is limited evidence that antimicrobials reduce the spread of infection, and there is ample evidence that they breed stronger microbes. Like other chemicals we've been discussing, antimicrobials are persistent and bioaccumulative. They enter our systems dermally, through ingestion, and through inhalation. In furnishings, they're commonly used in mattresses, especially those touted as hypoallergenic. Obviously, if they're in your mattress, you're being exposed as you lie on it for hours each night and breathe in the dust that comes off it. Antimicrobials also may be added to finishes and to furniture fabric. They are extremely persistent. So they go on to disturb other lives when they leave our systems and enter our septic systems, seeping into our waterways. And we're often exposed in multiple ways, more and less directly. Antimicrobials are a concern because they're associated with adverse endocrine and thyroid and reproductive changes. That is to say, with mutations. And cancers often result from these changes. Our recommendation is that you avoid products with added or built-in chemical antimicrobials. For instance, you can get a perfectly clean and comfortable mattress made of all natural materials, and regular soap will get your hands as well as your furnishings products good and clean. Now, we must admit that an all natural mattress like the one you're seeing here is more expensive. So this is a good time to point out that it will also last longer, usually, and that there are different kinds of expense. There is the expense to your health as well as the expense to your pocketbook. So you might actually be saving money when you end up spending less on an illness. There are no certifications of antimicrobial-free, so this is not something I can show you a certification about, but the work that the Healthier Hospitals Initiative is doing is pertinent. The goal of the Healthier Hospitals, Healthy Interiors Initiative is to ensure that 30% of the annual volume of furniture purchases eliminate the use of formaldehyde and perfluorinated compounds and polyvinyl chloride and antimicrobials and all flame retardants. As you can hear, our What's It Made Of initiative brings this guidance to residential furnishings. At this point in our presentation, many people wonder, why isn't the government doing something to protect us? And I do urge you to ask your legislators for regulation for safer chemicals, whether in furniture or in other consumer products like cleaners. California has shown leadership with Proposition 65, also called the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act, which was enacted in 1986 to help Californians make informed decisions about protecting themselves from chemicals known to cause cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harm. Formaldehyde and most flame retardant chemicals and phthalates are among the 800 plus chemicals currently on the Prop 65 list. The result of Prop 65 is that almost everything in California must be labeled. Since labels are on everything, we can glaze over and not pay attention. So the answer is still your willingness to be alert and to ask questions such as, what's it made of? The importance of asking questions about what things are made of cannot be overemphasized. Adding your voice helps support a market for eco-friendly products and reinforces the need for manufacturers and dealers to provide more options. As we said earlier, what you want to think about as you're specifying products with any of these 5 chemicals are things like, is it necessary? Is it worth it? And is there a safer alternative for me to serve my need? Now, SFC's vendor questionnaire can be useful in these conversations that I know you're going to want to have with your existing vendors, so you can access it here on our website. And with that, I am going to turn to your questions, trusting that you have sent some in. So please send in questions in the chat box. Good, there are a whole bunch of them. Let's see. The first one I see is, with COVID-19, how do we protect our clients without antimicrobials furnishings? Is there an alternative? Yes. The antimicrobials that are being added to many fabrics are not necessarily effective in stopping the coronavirus that has caused COVID-19, and especially since that coronavirus is mutating so quickly and there are more and more of them out there, those antimicrobials may or may not be actually providing the protection that they might be telling you that they're providing. However, all of the coronaviruses are lipid molecules, that is, they are fatty, that is, they will break down with soap. So learning to use soap and water, teaching ourselves to wash and to wash products is really the best defense that we've got. Okay. Is there an alternative to the toxic adhesive for composite boards that has some or similar efficacy on the market? Is there something on the market that is as effective and less toxic? Yes, there are companies that make just as effective and less toxic composite boards. And I suggest that you look at what Columbia Forest Products is providing. It does have it is bound with an adhesive called Pure Bond that is less toxic. So that is one alternative for you. And there are more and more of these on the market now. Okay, although VOCs may not be present or low and other chemicals may be removed or certified, how do we ask what they've been replaced with to keep performance up, and how do we know their replacements are not harmful? This is a very good and important question. And the answer is you have to keep on asking questions. You have to ask a lot of questions, and you have to, and I'll tell you, use that vendor questionnaire because that is good guidance for you. You can ask those same questions about alternatives that are being presented, and the salesperson you're talking to is not always going to know the answers, but somebody at the company will. So I suggest a couple of things here. First, just ask. Asking is more important than getting any specific answer at this time. When you ask the question, even if you don't get a good answer, even if you don't get any answer, that question is going to move up the chain, and the company is going to begin to explore better options. And when you ask the question again next year, you might get a better answer. So at this point, worry most about asking the question. The other thing, though, is that you can tell them when you ask the question you would like them to get back to you eventually, and you can go ahead and specify what you need to specify and wait patiently for their answers. And that way of engaging with them is really good for your relationship with the company and for their wanting to change for you so as to make a difference. So it is a way of making more of a difference. Okay, next question. What is the average length of time that a VOC takes to complete off-gassing? Assume varieties of VOC type, but what is the range? Yes, you're right, it does vary. The rule of thumb is 3 to 12 months. That's the rule of thumb. And sometimes you can get more information about a finish, for instance. Sometimes you can get the manufacturer's safety data sheet, material safety data sheet from the manufacturer, and you can there find out more specifically what chemical is used and learn more about how long it's going to take for that to off gas. That's kind of complicated, but so the rule of thumb range is 3 to 12 months. Okay, can you clarify if Cal 117 is to be flame retardant or not use flame retardant? So Cal 117, which was enacted in 1978, required the addition of flame retardant chemicals to flexible foam. In 2013, it was amended so that those chemicals were no longer required to be in flexible foam, and the test changed as well, so that now you can make furniture that is, of course, completely fire safe with no added flame retardant chemicals. Another question, so is Eco Wool better for keeping furnishings flame retardant? Now, Eco Wool is a particular kind of barrier. So if you were to use a barrier which would address an open flame test, which is not required by any testing protocol now, but if you were to use a barrier for one reason or another, if you were to use a barrier, definitely Eco Wool would be better. The alternative would be a barrier that has the flame retardant in the barrier, and that would get the flame retardant chemicals into the atmosphere, into the bodies, into our environment anyway. And somebody's obviously, this has so much information in it. So you will be glad to know it has been recorded. You will get a link. It will be on our YouTube. With regard to any specific fabric treatment, I'm thinking Alta in particular, if you can comment, how does one sell the performance quality of a fabric as safe? Is it even possible? Is nanotechnology safer? Well, I can't comment on that, on Alta specifically. However, here's what I'll say. When it is, what we have talked about today is those highly fluorinated treatments that might be in the fabric or applied to the fabric afterwards. That's what we've been talking about. They are the ones that most vigorously repel oil, for instance. Polypropylene, or the olefin products are going to be very good at repelling water, but if you get salad dressing on it, it might make a stain. So I would recommend that you choose, if you're going to choose a synthetic performance fabric, you might choose that one, and share with your clients stain removal tips, like put salt on an oil stain and let the salt absorb the oil before you wash it away. So that is my recommendation, is that we recommend washing as often as possible. You know, go with something washable. Consider a pair of slip covers, for instance, that can be swapped out. And go back to good old soap and water. That's what I would do. But the question about, is nanotechnology safer? It really isn't much knowledge on that. It can be safer in the lab without our having had experience of it in our ecosystems for very long. So let me see. So we probably have yet to learn much about, there's probably much about nanotechnology that we have yet to learn. Now, this next question is a long one, and I've got to figure out how I can read it from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to skip this one for now, if I can. What do you think of real leather? Real leather is great. Real leather is a byproduct of cattle production, of beef production. Beef production, cattle grazing is not great. We've got way too much forest that we're continuing to lose to increased cattle production. But the leather itself is a byproduct of that industry. And even when all of us eat 40% less meat than we do now, which all of us should do to address the climate crisis, even then there will be plenty of hides that, if they are not used for leather, will be burned or otherwise solid waste pollution. Now, leather, not all leather is tanned and treated equally. So you do want to find out from your vendor about their tanning practices. And you know, if they're being responsible, they're going to be very glad to tell you how they sequester the chemicals in the factory, how the factory water, or how the water leaving the factory is cleaner than what's coming in, etc. And you should ask those questions, but know that good, clean leather lasts a good long time, longer than vinyl, and it also, when it breaks down, when it's good, clean leather, is breaking down to good, clean dirt rather than to a persistent harmful chemical. So leather's a good choice. Is there an index or list of green furniture companies that are transparent about what their products are made of? Yes. Sustainable Furnishings Council members have made a commitment to transparency. So they are all committed to answering your questions, and you can find them by searching for products on sustainablefurnishings.org. And you can be confident that they will answer your questions. Again, not every member of the team is going to know the answers to all the questions, but all of them are going to have somebody on staff that can answer your questions. And so you should ask. And we are reaching the end of this hour, so I'm not going to have time to answer all your questions. For that, I apologize, but feel free to reach out to us at our website anytime, and we're always happy to answer questions. We're always happy to answer questions. This is a CEU course, and I apparently forgot to put the CEU number on this slide, but we will be reporting your attendance, and you can get the CEU number from us by contacting us. And with that, I am going to thank you very much